Hi, thanks again to everyone who's joined. We're going to get started now. I'm going to hand off to Marcus, who will be leading us through this presentation.
Hi, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. Appreciate all of you joining us today. We're really excited to walk you through some really cool tips, how you can utilize mentorship while working from home, whether you're looking to launch a new program or transition from your already existing program into a remote one. So to get started, just want to discuss a little bit about what we'll be presenting to you today. You know, with everything going on in the world right now, there's nothing that's more important than the health of our friends and family. COVID-19 has forced almost every company in North America to work from home. And while it's great to spend more time with our families, there are definitely underlying issues that are affecting all of our organizations. So the team here at Together thought it might be useful for us to share some different strategies on how some of our existing customers have utilized mentorship remotely prior to the pandemic to effectively connect their workforce and just really ensure that their employees feel valued. Mentoring certainly isn't more important than family and health. However, there may be a greater need for mentoring now more than ever. So to kick off, just wanted to take you through a quick agenda, tell you a little bit about what we'll be talking about in particular. We're going to be discussing the importance of staying connected while working from home and the various benefits that mentorship can contribute to remote work. I'll be walking you through a step-by-step guide of how you can quickly launch a mentorship program at your organization that engages your remote workers and show you some actionable tips and tricks on how you can actually transition your existing program to be remote. So a little bit of a background on myself and the Together platform. I'm Marcus Butters, and I am an account executive here at the Together platform. I've had the pleasure of working with a number of different companies of all shapes and sizes to ensure that their mentorship needs are met. More importantly, I wanted to talk a little bit about our company and how it was started. Together was founded by two former BCG consultants, Matthew Reeves, who gave this introduction, and Nathan Goldstein. Through their consulting work, they came to the realization that mentorship was a massive need at enterprise companies, so they decided to take it upon themselves to try and make a difference in this world. As you all know, people are struggling right now. It's a really tough time. Employees are wondering if they're going to get laid off. They haven't had human contact in a couple of weeks, and some of us are really feeling alone. And various studies have found that working from home can actually induce stress and increase anxiety since you're socially isolated from your teammates. Our hope is that we can provide you with some creative ideas to mitigate those feelings amongst your employees and really spread positivity throughout your organization. The feeling of isolation can quickly turn a productive employee base into a pessimistic workforce. And today we'll be showing you different steps that you can take to combat some of those negative effects of remote work that might be plaguing your teams. Just wanted to start off with the concrete example of that. This graph is from Robert Half. They released a study on the downsides of telecommuting, and this study represents just how isolated your employees might be feeling right now. We want to ensure that you're fully equipped to help your employees and really provide them with the tools that they need in order to be happy and engaged while working remotely. I can't speak for all of you, but after 2 weeks of working from home, the loneliness is really starting to set in on my end. Luckily, I have my dog Oscar here. He's keeping me company. I apologize if he barks during this webinar. Please be patient with me, but I'm trying to keep him behaved as possible. Some of your employees may not be as lucky as I am and may be feeling extra lonely during these times. And that's why I really think mentorship can be extremely impactful right now. Just below loneliness, you'll see that lack of communication and collaboration is another common theme among remote workers. So I'll be showing you how mentorship can actually be used to reverse those effects as well. To get started, just wanted to go over a few major themes that mentorship has proven to help with when working remotely. Our goal today is essentially to help you help your employees. So this graphic highlights how each step of traditional mentorship is impacted when you do conduct it remotely. But of course, thanks to technology, we can run a virtual mentorship program very similar to the way that you'd run a traditional face-to-face mentorship program with very little downside and negative impact. Each step plays its own unique and important role in making sure that your program really launches smoothly and continues to run perfectly throughout its duration. I'm going to walk you through each of these steps and share best practices and provide you with new ideas as to how to transition your current program or launch a new program remotely. What we'll start off with is marketing your mentorship program. To me, marketing the program is the key to getting people interested and excited about committing to mentorship. There are a number of different channels that you can use, just like any traditional marketing campaign, but the most effective when it comes to mentoring is webinars or mass video conferences. Engaging your employees through a webinar is super simple, but it's extremely effective when you're able to highlight how mentorship can actually impact their career and help them excel in any department that they're trying to thrive in. There are a ton of great resources online that you can use to support your claims when it comes to marketing your program. If you're really looking to go above and beyond to engage your employees, you can also check out some of the pro tips that we've listed here on the right. In my opinion, now is a better time than ever to dive headfirst into a strategic marketing campaign at your organization. My suggestion would be, if you and your team members have some extra time later on today, set up a virtual meeting, brainstorm some different ideas that your company can use to help promote an internal marketing program, and maybe ask a few employees in your organization how they'd react to these marketing campaigns. It could be a great step towards launching your first program or transitioning to your remote program at this time. Employees are really eager for something new and exciting to do, and the thought of enrolling in something that could enhance their career would be especially interesting at this time. Wanted to show you a quick case study from Randstad, one of our portfolio customers. Randstad utilized video testimonials to generate interest among their employees. And what they did was they previously ran a global mentorship program internally before adopting it together to support their needs. They asked a mentor from each city to share why mentorship was important to them. And I'm going to show you a little bit about what they had to say.
It's not just about seeing where gaps are in your game. It's about identifying strengths and looking for ways to leverage those as you continue to build your leadership style.
My mentor let me look at many things, and that gave me the opportunity to see other ways and possibilities.
Being a mentee is the best opportunity for me to get the best practices, managerial practices. I feel very confident and welcomed, and I feel supported by my mentor.
I see a difference in myself and my.
Using strategies like these can be instrumental in engaging your employees and really getting them excited to potentially join a mentorship program. Next thing I wanted to take a look at is the registration questionnaire and how that's impacted when working remotely. It has very little impact, but the key point for remote registration is actually to monitor the results and ensure that you have a good representation across different regions so that everyone can be paired with someone who really fits their time zone and availability. Once you have those logistics figured out, you're free to customize the remainder of the questionnaire to fit whatever program you're running or whatever your organization's needs are. If you're not familiar, registration questionnaires are super simple to design. They're great for gauging how your employees perceive themselves in specific skills and areas for development. The next two slides here are examples of questions that our customer, First Round Capital, has used to pair their remote employees. One really important thing that I think you should take into consideration is that your employees may have moved to a different location because of the pandemic. You know, they might have gone home to their parents' house, isolated themselves in a different state. You really can't be certain as to where they are right now. So ensuring you know their exact location is great for matching with them with someone in their time zone. Another benefit to this, making sure that the time zones are aligned, is that the mentee and mentor can eliminate any discrepancies that there might be when it comes to scheduling any of their sessions, making sure they're showing up at the right time. Nobody wants to be stood up for a meeting, of course, so that's something that's of really high importance when you are conducting remote mentorship. Now that I'm working from home in a full, very busy house, I've had to plan out my schedule very carefully, as I'm sure most of you have as well. What I've done is I've allotted time for myself to exercise, eat, clean up a little bit, and of course, spend time with the family. For me, I don't have any kids, so I don't have to have as strict as a schedule as some of your employees might. Many people have kids and families that they need to manage, so they might have different time restrictions. So setting up preferred times to connect also gives your employees the opportunity to meet at a time that works for both parties. And you know that those times are agreed upon ahead of time, of course. Since we're unable to see our employees every day, it's become increasingly difficult to track and understand their development. Mentorship really requires you to highlight your skills and goals and really assess them as you progress throughout the program. One thing that we found to be a great way to track development is by actually hosting 3 mandatory webinars or video conferences that revolve around feedback and assessments. In these webinars, you can take a brief pause and ask your employees to fill out a certain survey, have them do an assessment, complete a feedback form. It's great to do it while everyone's together in the same place. You know that they're not working on anything else. So this ensures that you're actually going to receive the information that you need in a timely manner and understand the development through each of these meetings and see the progress that the program and your employees enrolled in the program are showing. Disney uses these tactics in a live setting, and they have told us how impactful it is on their employees' development. And they've really seen the growth and the excitement that their employees are showing after they collect all the data from these meetings. So it could be very easily transitioned to a webinar format as well. So this is the different ways that you can run the pairing process. This doesn't change at all, essentially. You can either run a mentee-led process or an admin-led process. For those of you who aren't familiar with these 2 methods, I could share more information with that later on. I'll be sharing the slide deck afterwards, so you will all have full access to this. But essentially, admin-led is, the admin takes full control of the pairing, matches everyone with a mentee and mentor, and that's it. Mentee-led pairing process, the mentee is able to have a say in who they want to be matched with, or could even choose who their exact mentor is. Of course, both of these methods have their pros and cons. So you can take a look at what program you're looking to run, what you're looking to do within the organization, and that is where you can make your decision. It really does come down to personal preference. Moving on to the different pairing types that you can run. So there are multiple pairing processes that you can have. The most common type of pairing we see is traditional one-on-one mentorship, which, as most of you are familiar with, it typically entails a junior employee being matched with someone a little bit more senior. They can discuss goals and really just how to achieve those goals. But unfortunately, we're in tough times, and it could be a good idea to match your employees more around the idea of getting to know new people and really expanding your network. So this could mean matching people within their own department or other departments that they might not interact with on a daily basis. It really is a critical time to build camaraderie in our organizations and give your employees the opportunity to broaden their network within the company, develop new relationships, and have the chance to speak to people that they may have never spoken to before. Another great opportunity you have with remote mentorship, of course, is peer mentoring. With employees feeling alone and isolated, peer mentoring can be a great tool for team building, sharing best practices, or just helping one another through these tough times. I, for one, am grateful that I have a great colleague that I've been hopping on Zoom calls with every Tuesday and Thursday to discuss what we've been working on and really support each other where needed. Of course, I miss seeing them face to face, but being able to hear their voice, it definitely brings me some joy on my Tuesdays and Thursdays when I don't have time to spend with my dog, Oscar. Of course, for the time being, we don't have the ability to lean over our desk beside us or take a 10-second walk to your teammate's cubicle to discuss our obstacles. So peer mentoring can be a great method to combat that. Reverse mentoring is another great tactic to have an awesome impact on remote work. For me, it's been a huge struggle to help my dad get his home office set up, teach him how to use video conference, and explain to him how to properly communicate over his internal messaging board. reverse mentoring can allow your more junior employees to actually teach and guide your tenured employees how the world of technology actually works. And again, hopefully form some relationships that otherwise may not have been formed if we weren't in this sticky situation. Last thing I wanted to touch on was group mentoring. It's an extremely useful way to connect specific employees within a team or department to brainstorm or discuss any challenges that they're facing while working from home. Giving your employees the ability to collaborate like this is, of course, a surefire way to boost connectivity, increase employee engagement, and just promote teamwork within the organization itself. So in normal times, we'd suggest that a 3 to 6 month program with 6 sessions would be ideal. However, given our current circumstances, it is best to shorten the program length as much as possible, especially since work is slower. Not many of us are, buried in our work, and we do have a lot more free time on our hands. I'm sure I speak for most of us at this time, but everyone has, of course, canceled their commute. There are fewer meetings. So this is the best time to really take advantage of mentorship. The number one reason that your skilled and more tenured mentors don't volunteer for programs like this is actually due to time constraints. And now that they're more available, they should have the capacity to take on more mentees to coach and advise. And with those more frequent meetings, you have the ability to implement new strategy and those key advice pieces from your mentor in a quicker fashion and hone in on them and hopefully be able to execute them in your everyday work life. Despite the fact that the meetings themselves are the most impacted by working remotely, there are several ways that we figured out to ensure that you can actually still benefit your employees by implementing mentorship. Of course, the use of technology, video conferencing in particular, provides us with a very easy workaround. A strong mentorship meeting requires a thought-out agenda. Give your employees the necessary tools that they need to connect for their meetings. Make sure that your employees know how to set up their own Zoom conferences. I've been on a number of different calls with more tenured employees that just have no idea how to work their own Zoom conferencing link. So ensuring that everyone knows where to find their own personal meeting link, how to include it in a calendar invite is very important when you're setting up remote mentorship. Another key piece is including an IT team's member's email to ensure that if any issues do arise, they have quick access to that. You're not taking too much time delaying the meeting to have that connection happen. There's several studies that support the idea that video calls create a more impactful relationship than phone calls. So if you can, try to enforce this as much as possible. Make sure that your employees can see one another, see the reaction on each other's face, and really build a more intimate connection, because that's what mentorship is supposed to look like. A major component of mentorship is job shadowing, and working remotely actually makes it a lot easier to do that. As I'm sure most of you are familiar, screen sharing is a tool that is built into every video conference software, and it's really a great asset for understanding how mentees and mentors perform their everyday tasks. So working remotely actually provides a really unique opportunity for mentees and mentors to shadow each other's calls. Video and phone meetings are more prevalent now, so you can listen on those calls. Of course, be sure to introduce the people that are shadowing you, and include a Q&A later if you're the mentor. If you're the mentee, you should open yourself up to feedback. Ask how you can improve yourself on those calls, and really just try and improve yourself as much as possible. When we get back into the office, you're still going to be conducting video calls. You're still going to be conducting phone calls. So try and get the best out of it while you can. I won't spend too much time on this slide right here. I'm sure most of you are already familiar with these practices. They've been posted all over LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media website you're on. But one thing that I did want to point out that I do find especially important is that you should really encourage your employees to confirm all their sessions before each meeting. Mentorship is built on trust, and it's very easy to lose trust in someone if they're not able to show up to a meeting that you both agreed upon for the time. I know I've been stood up for a lot of calls. I think I've been stood up by a few people on this webinar, but that's okay. We want to ensure that the mentee and mentor have a strong foundation when it comes to trust as they go on their mentorship journey. Of course, long are the days where we can walk up to our coworkers and ask them how their recent mentorship session went. But the silver lining to working remotely is the accurate reporting and analytics that you're actually able to receive while working remotely. Everything's communicated electronically, so you have the ability to collect all of your data in one place. And as I touched on in the development page, you should utilize a three-pronged approach to checking in on the status of your employees and how they're actually enjoying the program. Another thing that you can do is send out surveys periodically throughout the duration of the program, collect specific pieces of feedback, and just really understand what the health of your program is looking like, who's enjoying what aspects, what are your employees gaining from this mentorship program overall. This is the last slide I wanted to share with you before we enter the Q&A portion of the webinar. We wanted to provide you with a list of best practices if you're looking at launching your own mentorship program, or if you're looking to transition your existing mentorship program to remote. We want to make sure that everyone in our network at Together has access to the necessary information required to successfully kick off your own program, while of course staying safe and healthy. As I mentioned, health and safety is everyone's #1 priority right now, and hopefully this webinar was able to spark some great ideas or give you some guidance to help launch your mentorship program within your company while working remotely. I'd like to take the time now to open up the floor for any questions. If you were looking to ask myself, or both of our co-founders are on the line as well. We have Nathan Goldstein and Matthew Reeves, who I am about to unmute right now. And
Hey everyone, this is Nathan on the line. I just wanted to actually highlight one piece of the development process that Marcus mentioned earlier. Marcus, it was the three-pronged webinar approach page.
Yep.
And I just wanted to highlight a little bit more on this if you flip over to it. Perfect. So, and there's a question from someone in the chat about the Disney approach here. So really what this is suggesting is that you should make 3 mandatory webinars throughout the course of the remote mentoring program. And in the very first one, the program kickoff, spend 5 minutes where everyone kind of just stops for a second and fills out the form for their skills and goals assessment, where they can assess on their skills. And if then you take that skills and goals assessment from the first webinar and aggregate the data, you will find key themes around what people's greatest areas for development are. So you might find out that at your company, the biggest problem people are having are with delegation and with speaking up in meetings. So if those are the 2 biggest themes, then take this second webinar, which is your midway check-in, and make that the theme. That's what Disney does. So they'll take the main area for development and they'll say, we've put together some content and discussion and maybe some mentors whose specifically strength is around delegation and communicating in meetings. And then that's your midway check-in. And then your third webinar is going to be your final assessment, and you get people on the line to fill out how much they progressed for those.
Thanks, Nathan. So we're, of course, happy to answer any questions if you'd like to put them in the chat. Matthew, Nathan, and I could tackle those for you. If there are no questions, then we can wrap things up. If you'd like to raise your hand, I'll give you another few seconds here if anything pops into your mind. But of course, you are able to shoot me an email if you have any questions later on. Oh, we have a question from Kara. Nathan, are you able to tackle that one?
All right. I think everyone can hear me. So question from Kara was around the midway check-in. Would you do training on the topics identified in the kickoff? Yeah, so the way that this works is, at least at Disney, what they do, before COVID-19, they actually had a monthly check-in rather than a midway check-in, and they dedicated each one of the check-ins to one of the themes, as I mentioned earlier. So one of the formats that you could use is a panel. And what you can do is, if you have the registration data, Kara, that tells you which mentors have the strength in, for example, delegation, or in, for example, speaking up in meetings, look through that, find the mentors that you think would be really good for a panel, and then have those mentors volunteer up on the midway check-in panel in your webinar. And so then they can talk about a couple of stories they've had throughout their career of what moments clicked for them for delegating, what was a really good example, and then give some tips on how to basically progress in this particular skill. And because this is one of the most common themes that you found out from your first webinar in the skills assessment, it's going to impact the most people. So that's definitely one thing you can do. You can also compile any kind of like great little video clips or resources to share on the webinar as well. That's one format we've definitely seen. Thanks for the question, Kara. Lil has a question. Best ways to build relationships of the pairs remotely. Any tips beyond video conferencing to get to know each other better and form trust? So this is a great question. I think that this is more broad, more than just mentorship specifically. This is about really how to establish a connection with someone for the first time remotely. Certainly what I've seen really work well during the COVID-19 situation is I feel like we're all a little bit more grounded and more kind of, we can relate to each other better by talking a little bit about how we're dealing with the situation over time and whether other people are affected. I feel like it's just a really great conversation starter. I was just on a call today with one of our vendors, and we talked about kind of like home exercise routines and things that we're doing to stay sane, whether our families are safe, etc. I feel like that's just a really great way to get things started. And I think that as you start to get to beyond the first session, where you really want to turn to is start to think about like how the mentor can help the mentee with how their job or title in general has been affected by the situation. So I know a lot of people are dealing with uncertainty around which projects are kind of on hold, etc. And what I think a mentor can really do in this case to help build the relationship a bit better is to connect the mentee with other people in the organization whose projects might need some help or might need some kind of extra hands. I know a lot of people's roles are shifting at this time. And so I think one way is just to build trust is just to like be quick to introduce the mentee to anyone else in the organization that you think would be really helpful for them. Those are probably my two tips. Maybe Matt or Marcus has some more on the line, but I think this is definitely a broad one around how do you build remote relationships really well.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Nathan. Definitely a great response. Everyone is a little bit more vulnerable now with the times that we're experiencing. So like you said, just kicking it off with understanding how people are dealing with this. Not only does working from home provide that stress and anxiety, but the fear of the virus itself has, of course, affected a lot of us. So just getting to know one another personally and just really understanding what your coworkers are going through can be great to build that trust, really understand what is affecting them at this time, and will help you form those meaningful relationships when you're back in the workforce as well.
Another question from Lil on what support can be offered to mentors after having challenges across their pairs. There's definitely a number of things you can do for them. I think Nathan will add to this as he works closer with the customer, but certainly some things I've seen is having mentorship support groups, either using our own tool to have like a mentorship program for mentors, or using another community tool like Slack and having a channel for your mentors to communicate best practices. Of course, just having a repository of shared resources is another obvious solution. I think it's just providing a couple of different options for them. Adding a webinar certainly would also help if you're doing your survey and you're getting feedback that mentors need help on a specific topic. Curating some content and having a webinar on that, of course, makes sense.
Yeah, I think that to go off Matt's point, one of the things that we've seen work really well in the interim is if you're either on Slack or if you're on Microsoft Teams or an equivalent, having a channel for the mentors specifically is really good. I also think that you should make sure, regardless of how you're running your mentoring program, that every mentor knows exactly who the point person is on the administrative side of the program to like ask any questions and get support in that case. I also think that you should encourage your mentors to have at least one webinar or kind of meeting where they can exchange some ideas and definitely pass on what they're doing to make the mentorship is most effective for their mentees. But Slack and Teams has worked really well for some of the companies that we work with, for sure. So actually, this question is for everyone on the call from Tiffany. Is anyone on the call actively using peer mentoring? We're merging with another organization, and I would love to know some best practices for getting new leaders connected with legacy leaders. Marcus, I don't know if you have to unmute everyone for this one, but I can just, while you're figuring that out, start off with one example, Tiffany. So one of the examples is actually one of our customers, Metler Toledo, who used our tool to run a peer-to-peer women's mentoring program. And the participants were actually very much, they were remote, so they were from all across the US, but they were very much equal tenure. And this was an opportunity for them to share ideas. And one of the things that they did is they combined their mentoring sessions that were one-on-ones with the broader women's program that they had, for which they had monthly meetings. And so in those monthly meetings, they were probably over web conference, and then sometimes people would be in person for a presentation. They would then kind of fence off 15 minutes to chat about how their one-on-ones were going and share tips. So, but that was certainly a peer program where both women in the relationship were definitely of a tenure that was equivalent, and they were kind of sharing their experience with that. In particular, Tiffany is wondering if anyone on the line has done it where new leaders, new managers are being connected with ones from the existing organization after a merger. Has anyone had experience with that?
I have unmuted everyone, but some of you have muted yourselves as well. If you have anything to share, you just have to click on your microphone and make sure that is unmuted there, but you do have the capability to do that now.
So one thing that, Tiffany, to address your point, that can really help, we actually have a set of onboarding agendas for mentoring programs specifically geared towards onboarding. And in that, onboarding set, which I'm happy to share with you. One of the agendas focuses particularly around getting to know the structure of the organization. I'll see if I can pull it up in the meantime. But what that means is in that session, it can be session 2, dedicate a complete session agenda towards talking about who the senior leadership team is at the company that's part of the merger, or if this is onboarding a new manager, just the current senior leadership team, and then talk about their personalities and what they care about the most. And I think when you cover exactly what people from the senior leadership team care about and what their personalities are, you can start to kind of fit in how your role is going to roll up towards what their goals are for the organization. So an example would be, let's say, I'm a new manager and I just merged in after a merger, and I sit in the finance team. And I know through discussing with someone who's in the organization already that the CFO really, really cares about cost cutting, but in particular non-personnel costs. So that might be equipment, travel, etc. So then you can start to think about like, okay, that's what that person cares about. I'm in finance. Like, how can I think about auditing our next initiatives to make sure that people aren't asking too much for budget in these categories, etc. So I hope that's not a super convoluted example, but just kind of understanding what the main priorities of the senior leadership team are can help align your day-to-day with that. That would be a good topic for a peer mentoring session.
That was great. Thanks for sharing.
Hey, Tiffany, this is Lil, and I don't know if this helps, but we did not merge in with the state health department, but we had certain people that we kind of wanted to make sure they were paired or not paired. And so just kind of consulting with Nathan about how we should ask those registration questions was incredibly helpful. And it wasn't necessarily a weight, but he helped us realize like this should be a restriction, to make sure that the people were paired correctly if we wanted to do it that way.
Yeah, so just to add to this, Marcus, would I be able to share my screen briefly, actually?
Yes, I believe I'd have to make you the host, and I've just done that.
Okay.
I will stop sharing.
Okay. So real quick for those on the line, I just wanted to share what session 2 is under our onboarding flow of sessions. And so actually, I just previously discussed overview of organization structure, where you discuss who are the members of the executive team, and then how does the mentor-mentee's role fit into the wider org structure. So we just talked about this with that finance example, but there's also a set of questions that you really should go over in session 2 around what are the core values, what are the big no-nos, what are things that like people would really kind of find offside if you suggested just based on the company's culture and history. And then certainly like what has the history of the company been. I think that any kind of large mergers and acquisitions certainly change the trajectory of the company culture. You might say, oh yeah, well, you know what? As opposed to other companies, we're actually really spread out throughout the US. And so the culture in those different regions is an impact when it comes to collaborating. So, if you're dealing with somebody from the West Coast or something like that, that used to be an organization that merged in, and they had really strong tech focus, and people really want to, have focus on technical solutions to problems. Oh, and by the way, like, don't talk about politics with them. Like, that's just not a good idea because we just have kind of a different culture. So I think there's definitely ways to discuss in session 2 how some of the history throughout the company has shifted. One other point here to make, and this actually answers both Tiffany and Lil's point a little bit, is if you're a new employee or a new leader after a merger, make sure to highlight some of the key clubs and activities that you can be a part of. It's actually not related to mentoring, but really helps assimilate that person and make them feel like they are welcome. So that's definitely another tip there for this session. So a question by Kara, is session 1 and session 2 document going to be shared? I'm happy to share the entire onboarding use case set of agendas for you guys. Typically when you start a program with us, you get our default leadership set, and we're actually adding the rest of these into the product, but in the meantime, I'm happy to share the Google Docs. Lil, are you planning to update any template agendas with a few questions that may want to be asked because of COVID? That's a great idea. We're happy to do that. In particular, provide some of the tips that we added into this webinar around the remote aspect of this. We're definitely happy to do that, and we'll share some updates for you after the call. So thank you all for joining. If you have more questions, we're happy to take them over email. I wanted to wrap this up by saying that this is not the only webinar that we'll be hosting. We are going to host a series of webinars throughout this time that have particular focuses on different pieces. And I really hope that people continue to get some value out of the different best practices that we'll walk you through. Some of them will be related to, for example, measuring return on investment of your mentoring program, etc. So just stay tuned and we'll keep you posted on those.
Like Nathan said, thank you all for joining. I hope everyone stays safe and healthy, and looking forward to getting things back to normal as soon as possible. But in the meantime, we will be continuing to produce webinars, so we hope to see you there as well. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.